Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into episode 463 of the Tech Sideline podcast. The daunted transfer portal is finally open. Where are some former Hokies going? But more importantly, who is Virginia Tech bringing in? Basketball season rolls on. The Hokies fall to Wake on the men's side, Louisville on the women's side. All that and much more coming up on episode 463, the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. And we record on Tuesday, January 6, 2026 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor, David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And we are so thrilled you could join us on your Tuesday afternoon. Guys, how are you? How was your weekend, David? You went to Winston-Salem, to Louisville, back to Blacksburg. How was your weekend?
It was good, productive. I mean, when both basketball teams lose, it's tough. But I mean, there are maybe some positive takeaways, but it's good. I always enjoy visiting Louisville. It's cool city. Wish transfer portal kids didn't commit after midnight. We encountered that last night, and that's, just the nature of the beast, I guess. But,
that said, this transfer is, in my opinion, the best defensive end Virginia Tech has recruited in years and years and years.
All right.
So this wasn't some random three-star that's never going to do anything committing past midnight. This guy has got a chance to be a big-time impact.
When I went to write it up at like 12:45 in the morning last night and saw that out of high school he was a 5-star by Rivals, I was like, oh, okay. I don't feel as bad writing this up right now.
Virginia Tech just got a 5-star recruit and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, so there we go.
But it's all right. It's the grind of basketball season.
So we'll get to basketball season in just a minute. What are your overall thoughts? I'll start with you, Chris. Overall thoughts on the transfer portal so far. But before we get to who Virginia Tech is bringing in, let's look at who the Hokies lost. Are you surprised with anybody that has left the Virginia Tech program? And is Virginia Tech really going to miss anybody that has left the Virginia Tech program?
I'm not surprised by anything I've seen so far. Some of the guys we already knew were gone. Like Dante Lovett, he's going to go to UCLA, but he entered the portal way back in September.
Yeah.
So I haven't been surprised by anything. I still think there will be one or two surprises possibly by between now and January 16th, which is when the portal closes. There generally are a couple of surprises, but we just don't know who they're going to be at this point because that's why they're called surprises.
Yeah, I think the one potential surprise could have been Caleb Woodson. He's a guy who seemed like he had all the talent and just kind of never really panned out. He had some good stretches of play. Obviously had some off the field stuff he was dealing with, but besides that, it's two quarterbacks, Rango and Watson. You've got wide receiver in Selden, a tight end in Wimbush, two running backs in Coney and Bennett, two corners in Brown and Joseph Reddish, a wide receiver in Micah Matthews, and two offensive linemen in Stallard and Priester. None of those are really surprising except for Woodson. I think Woodson was a guy who you maybe would have liked to keep because he's shown, some highlights a little bit. He's made some big plays here and there, but outside of that, most of those other guys is kind of expected.
Do you think that Caleb Woodson, it's funny, like you never know how things are going to shake out. If Caleb Woodson goes to a place like Alabama, is that going to be somebody who, by the end of 2026, you look back on, you say, man, you really could have kept him in the fold? And maybe to add on to that question, is the reason he's leaving, maybe not the reason, but part of the reason he's leaving, because Virginia Tech was flat out maybe tired of some other things that were going on away from Caleb Woodson's performance on the field, if you know what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, you never know. I don't know anything about that part of it, but there's always things we don't know unless we're in the program ourselves. I think Caleb Woodson was a very talented recruit. I was high on him when he signed. Now, he was always a star type, that nickel coverage guy, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, in high school. And that's a position he played as a true freshman at Tech and did pretty well. Then they moved him inside as a sophomore in 2024. He had never played inside linebacker before. Did a pretty good job against the run. Adjusted there better than what Would have expected. Struggled against the pass. Took a step back this past year. Even if you discount, what happened right before the season started, his performances stopping the run were not as good as they were the previous year. And it's not surprising. Marv, I don't think was a good linebackers coach. And then when he was fired, he was replaced by someone who's never been a full-time coach before. So I don't think you can sit around and criticize the linebackers themselves too much when I don't think the decision-making at Virginia Tech over the last 4 years has put any of them in a position to succeed. All that cross-training they did. When you've got guys that aren't natural inside linebackers, to me, you can cross-train if guys are used to playing inside the tackle box. And then you can say, okay, we want you to play Mike and we want you to play Will random points in practice just to make sure you get the mental points down for both positions. That's fine if it's a veteran guy who's used to playing inside linebacker. If it's a guy who's never played in there before and lacks natural inside linebacker skills, and then you ask it to learn two different positions, it's a bad idea. Put him at one and then hope he can learn that one. And what they did to guys like Jaden Keller and Woodson and Kelly Lawson, those guys hadn't played inside the tackle box before, and then that's a problem in and of itself. But then you try to teach them all two positions at the same time. It's kind of hard to judge those guys because of that. I think he needed a fresh start. Probably more than anything else. I hope he goes on and has a good career wherever he ends up. But yeah, like I said, I think he needed a fresh start.
Well, I think the other tough part is there was a scheme change too.
Mm-hmm. Sure. In the middle of all that.
You go from what Brent Pry's defense was, a Chris Marv defense, and then Sam Seifkis. And he had all the stuff at the beginning of the season and just felt like he showed some bright spots, but never really settled in this year. And it was an up and down season where a coach got fired. Just tough. But yeah, I think he's a guy who, Virginia Tech at the end of this year, depending on where he goes and what he does, that's when you could be sitting there going, man, kind of wish we'd still kept him around. But you also, it might be the fresh start that kind of jump starts the next part of his career. So you never know.
So to who Virginia Tech has brought in, the Hokies have officially had 5 commits via the transfer portal, maybe potentially a 6th. That one is Ethan Grunkemeyer, quarterback from Penn State. Everybody's so excited about his potential to come to Virginia Tech. Before we go through the additional 5, Chris, if Ethan Grunkemeyer is Virginia Tech's starting quarterback next season, are you comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If he's been my number one target from the beginning. I think he's the best mix of right now and long term. Best mix of short term and long term. He would start immediately. He played really good football for Penn State down the stretch. He's got a tremendous arm, very accurate. I think he completed over 69% of his passes this past year at Penn State. If he put up that number at Virginia Tech, that would be a single season record in Blacksburg, right? I think we've forgotten what a natural passer looks like in Blacksburg because we haven't had one since Michael Brewer, probably, right? Or probably actually, I think maybe a couple others could have had a chance if they'd had the right players around them, but they didn't. But yeah, I think this guy's a big-time quarterback prospect. He was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school, and he's got a tremendous arm. First couple starts didn't go so well. One of those was against Ohio State, of course.
Yeah.
But he did well against Indiana. Played a great game against Clemson in the bowl game. I think he's a high-ceiling guy. He's going to improve Virginia Tech immediately. He's going to be light years ahead of Drones as a passer, even as a redshirt sophomore this year, assuming he comes here. We'll see. It's not official. But he's also got a really, really high ceiling, too. He's got an NFL ceiling. He's that talented.
I think it's funny. We've talked about this on Talking with Teal the last couple of weeks.
For a couple weeks now.
You asked me to buy or sell, and Andy and Teal did not buy.
That was pre-Christmas, too.
I bought it.
Pre-Christmas.
I bought it. I felt confident, and I still feel confident. He's a guy who, Danny O'Brien, the new Virginia Tech's quarterbacks coach, obviously very familiar since he was just his coach at Penn State. And what you're getting in him is a guy who was kind of thrown into the fire when Drew Aller went out with an injury. He came in, and it took him a little bit of time to get going, but as he got more comfortable, he got better as the season progressed. As Chris said, 69.1% of his passes, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks. But in the last 5 games, he threw 7 touchdowns to just 1 interception, completed 73% of his passes. And as Chris wrote yesterday, his best 2 performances came in his final 2 games. Rutgers, Clemson. Against Rutgers, 17 for 21. That's 81% for 209 yards and 1 touchdown, no picks. Against Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl, 23 of 34, 68% for 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He's not necessarily the most mobile guy, not really a mobile guy at all, but the offense that they're building around, if it's him, is you're going to be pass. And he's a guy who you got to give him time to stand in the pocket, but he's got a great arm. He's got good vision. He knows how to get the ball out. I mean, he is a much more advanced passer than anybody Virginia Tech's had in the last 5 years or so, probably. And he's he just finished his redshirt freshman year. And I think he's the guy Chris talks about building around. If Grunkemeyer is your guy going forward, you've got him this year when he's a redshirt sophomore. Then you got you got multiple years to build him up. And it wouldn't just be like a 1-year play. Like, Bo Perbula, who was at Penn State, he was at Missouri last year. There's familiarity with this coaching staff. He's a little bit more of a mobile threat, not as good of a passer, I think. Well, he's only got, 1 year of eligibility left.
Yes.
And so the tough part is you get him for 1 year and then you got to move on. This would provide consistency. And it felt like we talked about it a couple different times in the Brent Pry era. Grant Wells. Well, Grant Wells only had, 2 years when he came in, and then he was replaced by Kyron Jones, who it seemed like he had more time. And the tough part here is there were so many times, Kyron Jones wasn't necessarily a good passer to begin with, but when you have a scheme change, when you have an offensive coordinator or a quarterback's coach change, and there's so much change, a quarterback needs stability. And I think you go from Ethan Grunkemeyer, you go from having, he's obviously familiar with Ty Howell. He wasn't the OC per se, but he was the tight ends coach at Penn State. You come in here, you keep the same quarterback's coach from year 1 to year 2, and you come in and go, okay, if it's O'Brien and Grunkemeyer for the next 3 years, I think you're happy with that because you can slowly build on it each year. But you got to kind of keep, I'm not saying it has to be that kind of consistency, but it certainly helps when you can build on it year after year after year. And if you get him the right guys around him, I think he'll thrive. I mean, he showed this year at Penn State, even down the stretch with an interim coaching staff, James Franklin, that he can play well against really good teams. I mean, Kyron Jones would have struggled against Clemson. Know what I mean? And that's not me picking on Kyron Jones, but they're 2 completely different players.
Do you expect Virginia Tech to add another quarterback?
No, yeah. I mean, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
There's some rumors about the UNC guy. What's his name?
Bryce Baker.
Bryce Baker.
Yeah, he was. I believe he was Bill Belichick's first commit in Chapel Hill.
He walked out on the floor of the Smith Center with Bill Belichick, essentially saying hey, we're keeping this guy at the fold, and he was their 4th-string quarterback last year. So. Yeah. He would be a redshirt freshman, 4 years of eligibility. I guess Grunkemeyer and Baker be your 2 guys to build around for the next 3 years, but
could be
okay.
Well, I mean, Baker wouldn't stay here for 3-4 years as a backup, most likely. But I think he just wants to be developed.
Sure.
Right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see how all that works out.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech's smart to not go out there and target the best senior they can get this year because. You want to win the ACC, but this year the ACC and all their infinite wisdom has decided to send Virginia Tech on the road against SMU, Miami, and Clemson all in the same year, and only give them 4 home games on top of that.
Yeah,
right.
So it's an unbalanced, leaning towards the road schedule to begin with, and 3 of the 5 road games are against 3 of the toughest teams in the league. It's horrible, quite frankly. Getting a top senior quarterback for this year wouldn't have made you win the ACC this year. But getting Grunkemeyer, who's going to be good next year, and then is eligible to come back for 2027, it increases your chances of winning it 2 years from now, when the team should be peaking.
Yeah, I think Chris said it best. This is both a short and a long-term play where it's a guy with familiarity for the coaching staff, and it's not like he's not good. Like this is a good player who, honestly, I think, Penn State obviously got Rocco Becht from Iowa State, so it's not like the Nittany Lions need a quarterback, but I mean, he showed why he was a pretty talented prospect. This is a guy who can start for multiple years, and you can continue to develop him and build around him. And the recruiting pitch for wide receivers, running backs, whoever, can be, look, we are building something here. And the thing to keep in mind is, I think the running back room is a good example of it. You've got Marcellus Hawkins, who's a redshirt senior, but I think might be able to get a medical waiver because he was injured for 2 years at Central Missouri. So he could potentially have an extra year for 2027. Well, you got Jeff Overton. You just picked up a commitment from Bill Davis, who I can't remember if he has 1 or 2 years.
2 years left.
I mean, so you're accumulating some talent that you look at a lot of these guys that they've picked up, Carter, guys who have multiple years of eligibility. And I think that shows you that this can be a long-term play as well. If you can build consistency, think about it from, it's always going to be tough in the portal era to retain everybody, but if you think about it from the standpoint of next December, you're coming off a solid season, and you can retain the majority of your depth, the majority of your starters, you have a lot of momentum going into 2027. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the way it's shaping up now, it could be a possibility. And I think it starts with the quarterback.
So it's funny, I mentioned 5 incoming transfers for Virginia Tech. That is as of 1:57 p.m. on Tuesday, January 6th.
Let me check Twitter to see if anything's changed.
These are the 5 that have committed to the Hokies officially. Matt Henderson, tight end from Penn State. Daniel Jennings, edge rusher from Penn State. Justin Bell, offensive tackle from Michigan State. Bill Davis, running back from Louisiana. And Javion Hilson, a late addition, edge rusher from Missouri. What are your overall thoughts, Mr. Coleman?
All right. Let me take it one by one.
You got the floor.
Jennings was originally a 2025 recruit, or excuse me, 2026, but he reclassified to 2025. So he enrolled in college a year early, redshirted this past season at Penn State. He looks like a really good athlete. Kind of hard to tell because he was playing up the road in Princeton, West Virginia against little teeny tiny dudes, which of course he was dominating them.
Sure.
So you don't know how that translates to the next level. But but it looks like the athleticism is there. Justin Bell, don't know a lot about him. I know Matt Moore was already familiar with him from the recruiting process. 4 years left as an offensive lineman. All offensive linemen are developmental prospects, so I would expect him to, factor in more in 2027, 2028 than this year.
But that's Bell you're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a
Justin
guy.
Bell.
He's a guy that Matt Moore recruited to West Virginia.
Right,
so there's obviously some familiarity there with the staff, and I think you see that across the board with these guys.
You see that in the portal all the time for almost every school. With the familiarity plays a role. Bill Davis, his real name is Elijah Davis. I don't know how you get from Elijah to Bill, but maybe he'll tell us when.
He goes by Bill.
Very adamant that he goes by Bill.
I believe Nick was telling us that his nickname is like Billdozer.
That's
cool. He's
5'9",
225, so that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, he is one of those Khalil Herbert type guys, Terrion Stewart types, just really low center of gravity. And I think he's going to provide a good balance to the other backs that are in the program who are, a little bit more athletic. And Tech needed to take another running back because we got to remember that Jeff Overton's 178 pounds, right? He needs to be protected until he can get bigger. Like you don't want to go out there and giving him 15 to 20 carries a game with his size because he can get worn down in a hurry. And when you get worn down, that's when you get hurt. And if you get hurt, you can't lift weights, and then you'll never get up to 200 pounds, right? It becomes this vicious cycle. So for guys that need to add weight, it's very important to keep them healthy, as healthy as you can early in their careers. Now, he already missed basically that whole offseason last year with a torn ACL, which means he couldn't get much weight room time done. You don't want that to happen again. So I think, he's got to play. Don't get me wrong. He's just not going to be overused for his size. That's why adding Davis was important. Henderson, big-time pass catcher from Powhatan. caught 74 passes as a junior in high school. I think he's a top pass catching prospect as a tight end. I think he'll factor into the rotation immediately. The guy I love is Javian Hilson, who's the one who committed after midnight.
Yeah, 12:45 last night.
He was a top 80 recruit by every single recruiting service, 4-star, except for Rivals, who had him as a 5-star and the number 17 player in the country. Virginia Tech just got a commitment from a 5-star recruit. He redshirted this past year at Missouri. You don't see as many true freshmen play anymore these days, thank God, because of the transfer portal. Like, if you're like, I don't know about playing these freshman defensive ends, so let's just bring in a couple of portal guys and then redshirt the defensive ends and see how they develop, right? That's how coaches think these days. So, freshmen have to get over the fact that they're not playing as much. Hilson, I think, could have played this past year. He was physically well developed enough. I think he's extremely quick, got great twitch, really good size already. Like, this is the best defensive end Virginia Tech has signed in years, over a decade, maybe 2 decades. Okay, I mean, this guy is a high ceiling guy. I would say there's a strong chance he's an NFL player. I don't get excited. There's like one high school player per year I get excited about. And even though he's not a high school player, he's a portal guy. He's still a redshirt freshman. So he's still basically a younger guy. I don't get excited about unproven players. Okay. So whether they're high school or whether they're young transfers. But I think this guy's got a legit chance to start from day one.
He's got 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the trend you see across the board here, where it's a lot of guys with a lot of years of eligibility. Davis is kind of the outlier there. You just got to add depth, and this is a start. By the time you listen to this podcast, Tech may have picked up.
I know, which is what makes it so tough.
More commits. Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to add offensive line depth. You saw that connection with Matt Moore previously, with Bell, with Hilson. He's a guy who I think, like, it's very interesting how the portal rankings, recruiting rankings work, because it's like he goes from like being a 4-star, 5-star, and it's like he's a 3-star, and nobody can really explain. Nobody can really explain how it all works. It's just like, but I think, you got a new defensive line coach in Sean Spencer, interested to see how he uses him, and combine that yesterday with Kamari Copeland announcing he's coming back. I mean, you've got a third-team All-ACC defensive tackle coming back. You had Hilson on the edge. It'll be very interesting to hear what the coaches have to say about Hilson, considering such a highly recruited guy. I mean, you look at his offer list. We're talking Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, Miami. He got Penn State. He got recruited by the big boys. And now he's coming to Virginia Tech, and it flies a little bit under the radar because it's announced at like 12:30 a.m.
Right.
And I think he's going to have a huge impact. It'd be interesting to see how that rotation on the edge is. And then the Princeton, West Virginia kid. I mean, how it's not very often anymore you see guys from kind of Southwest Virginia, this part of West Virginia.
I don't know if he's originally from there. I want to say he played at Graham.
He did play at Graham in Bluefield, yeah.
Right, so I don't know if he's actually from West Virginia or Virginia.
Yeah,
this is Daniel Jennings you're talking about.
Daniel Jennings, and he's a defensive end too, and I think he was a 3-4-star guy. It's just I just find it so interesting, how like this part of the state, whether it's Virginia or West Virginia, there's only so much talent that comes out of here, and if you can get it back in the fold, I think that's solid. And obviously he's a guy, a couple Penn State kids in there who familiarity with the coaching staff. So,
Chris, is there a position group the Hokies are set at? Like, do you think they're done adding at the running back spot? That's the only one that kind of comes to mind, really.
They're still apparently hosting one of the Penn State running backs coming in, one of their backups, whose name I forget. Corey Smith. Thank you, Nick. There's 4,000 people in the portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guys are in the portal.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, like, I think they'll probably get Luke Reynolds, the other Penn State tight end. I would hope so. I would think so. We'll see. From a numbers standpoint, they should probably be done at defensive end because they've got 12 of them on the roster now. But 8 of the 12, I think, are redshirt freshmen or younger. So you'd like to see somebody with a little bit.
Yeah,
of
and we
experience
can
added there.
read through that list. Forgot Alosh Falls back, which
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
is kind of an underrated piece you've got back. I mean, he was pretty good at times this year. Jason Abbey, Asen Stevens, Derek Dandy, Zeke Chinwiki, Sherrod Henderson, Hilson, Brett Clatterbaugh, Daniel Jennings, who is the Princeton guy, Tyson Harley, Cameron Johnson, John Patrick Oates. So all but you got 12 defensive ends, and all but 4 of them are redshirt freshmen or younger. So maybe you get some more experience there. Like that will be interesting to see how they attack it. I would never say that they're done at any position, because if you can add more talent, you will do so.
Is there anybody the Hokies did retain that's under the radar that nobody's talking about where you're like, yes, Virginia Tech absolutely needed to keep this guy? I'm not talking about like Aiden Green or like Marcellus Hawkins. I'm talking about like one of these true freshmen last year that maybe played in 3-4 games, or maybe if not more, that Virginia Tech was able to retain that nobody's talking about that could have a huge year in 2026.
I mean, I definitely like some of those young defensive backs. I was a big fan of Knowledge Harrell coming out of high school. Listen, more Tech guys are going to enter the portal.
Sure.
We don't know whether the Hokies have retained them or not yet. Some of them have announced that they're coming back, but for others, we don't know. I mean, you got Noah Chambers out there tweeting stuff. It's like, which button do I push, right? How do you interpret that, right?
Which button do I push?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
just
crazy.
go look at his Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, he tweeted a picture and it's 2 red buttons, and, and he was like, which one?
Which one? Right.
And all the Tech fans are like, Hokie or Hokie.
right. But so you've got things like that going on. You've got young receivers on this team like Keelan Adams and Chance Wiggins that missed all of this past season with injuries. Haven't had a chance to progress because they've been hurt, but I still think they've got plenty of potential. And if Noah Chambers comes back, he's another one. There are others, Sheldon Robinson, who I think has a good future. They're all like Virginia Tech was not a well-coached team the last 4 years. When you're not a well-coached team, that means a large number of your players aren't getting the most out of their potential ability. I guarantee you there are players on this football team that come back next year that fans did not think much of, and they'll play better football next year under different coaches, and you'll see, oh wow, yeah, coaching really was an issue.
Yeah. Can I throw you guys a curveball a little bit that Nick and I were talking about earlier? How badly do you want to keep Benji Gosnell? Not to single somebody out, but like from a financial standpoint, how badly do you want to keep Benji Gosnell?
Very, very much like to keep Benji Gosnell. I think Penn State, especially with the type of offense Howell likes to run, it's like a 3 tight end offense. So they've got Matt Henderson, you've got Benji Gosnell,
Pierce Peterson.
Pierce, yeah, he'll redshirt.
Yeah,
he'll have to redshirt. Jarikus
Harrison's
Harrison,
back.
he's got experience. He's not big enough to be like Penn State tight ends. They like the big 6'5", 250-pound guys who can block, and that's not really Harrison, who's more like an H-back type. Harrison St. Germain is eligible to return. I'd like to add Luke Reynolds, who was a former 5-star recruit, and I think he's a really good athlete and would be a big upgrade from a blocking standpoint. So I'd like to have 4 guys they're competing for playing time, and eventually 3 of them win playing time. But I think with the right roster they'll play 3 tight ends next year. So very much I would like Benji Gosnell to be one of those.
I mean, I think he's a huge culture piece too. Like you talk about Benji Gosnell, he's a captain, and he was Brent Pry's first ever commit at Virginia Tech. You're talking about a guy who was basically previously recruited by Justin Fuente's staff. Brent Pry comes in, his recruitment kind of fell through the cracks a little bit because he got injured late high school. Brent Pry comes in, offers him. He's Brent Pry's first ever commitment, and he's gone through so much. And obviously we talked to him after going through the coaching change this year, just with Brent Pry leaving and whatnot, Phil Montgomery coming in, and I think Benji has a good head on his shoulders, and he's a good leader. Maybe having better coaching will help him a little bit. I think he was so underutilized as a pass catcher at times. Like, he's got a lot of talent, but the offense Virginia Tech ran, and part of it is when you have a quarterback who's not necessarily the most efficient passer and doesn't necessarily have a lot of time to throw the ball, and when you're not you're not spending much of your offense throwing it to your tight ends anyway. Your tight end's not going to have a lot of targets. But I think he's a good prospect. And I think that's keeping a guy like that in the fold. It's good for the culture of this team as him being a leader. But also, it lets you don't necessarily have to rush some of those younger guys into action. You can get them more time in the weight room, redshirt them a little bit. You kind of build up that room instead of, if you lose guys now, well, then all of a sudden, some of those redshirt freshmen might have to play a little bit more snaps.
All right, and with that, let's step aside and hear from one of our sponsors on episode 463 of the Tech Sideline podcast.
This Tech Sideline video comes to you from the Tech Solutions studio. Tech Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is techsolutionsva.com/careers.
Hey, and welcome back to episode 463 of the Tech Sideline podcast. I promise if we get another portal commit during this podcast, we will break the news here. But for now, let's turn the page to basketball. David, Hokies obviously have that huge triple overtime win over Virginia. You go to Winston-Salem. You are still extremely shorthanded, and you fall to Wake Forest 81-78. Good effort for the Hokies, especially after the way they played in the first half, but curious to get your overall takeaways from the Hokies' loss to the Deacs.
I thought it was a very well-coached game by Wake Forest. Steve Forbes, he's a great coach. He and Mike Young have, I think, played like 17, 18 times in their career, and it's like 10-9. I mean, they go back and forth. And what they did off the rip against Neoclis of Dallas, I thought was some of the best defensive game plan I've seen from anybody against the Hokies all season. What they did was they essentially blitzed the screen and then collapsed to the middle of the paint. And of Dallas likes to hit Amani Hansberry on that short roll, or even Christian Gerdak on that short roll, kind of the foul line. And what they did was they collapsed on it. And as a result of Dallas, he's a smart player. He was trying to adjust, but they kept changing. I mean, Steve Forbes talked about this after the game. They kind of changed up how they were defending it every couple of possessions. So it was a different look constantly. So if Dallas couldn't really settle down and get comfortable, he had like 4 turnovers by the first media timeout, which Mike Young called timeout. Tech was down 12-2. He had 3 consecutive turnovers that led to Wake Forest runouts. Hokies settle down. They take him off the floor, put Ben Hammond in. And it was only something that Wake Forest was doing when Abdallas was on the floor. They were defending Tech a little bit differently when he was on the bench. And I thought you saw the Hokies respond pretty well. They still had 13 turnovers in the first 12 minutes of the game. That tied their season high. And yet at halftime, it's a 4-point game. I thought they played okay defense. And then it just becomes kind of a possession-by-possession game. And where you're hurt is you don't have Toby Lawal, Tyler Johnson, Antonio Dorn, and your 2 bigs, Amani Hansberry and Christian Gerdak, both have 3 fouls by the 7-minute mark of the first half. And Amani Hansberry came in the second half and was terrific. He finished with 19 and 10, but he's only on the floor for 27 minutes. If you can squeeze 5-6 more minutes out of him, you probably win that game. But you're a little bit shorthanded. You can nitpick some of the late game possessions here and there. I thought at the end of the day it was back and forth, and Wake Forest kind of just made one more play than the Hokies. Nate Calmise, really good point guard. That was his highest output of the season. I thought Tech did a really good job of shutting down or limiting Juke Harris, Wake's top rebounder and scorer. Jalen Bedford was on him for a lot of the game. Ideally, I think that's a Tyler Johnson matchup, but he's obviously injured. But at some point later in the game, Calmise was cooking so much that Tech switched Jalen Bedford, its best on-ball defender, on to Calmise and limited him for a couple possessions. But at the end of the day, his game-winning shot, Ben Hammond basically has his body in front of him, puts a hand up in his face, and he hits a 3.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe if you had somebody different on him, they're a little bit taller and it impacts his shot a little bit more. But I thought the Hokies down the stretch, what really killed them was second chance points. Wake Forest, I don't remember the exact numbers, but there were a couple of different moments in this game where Wake Forest had second chance points, second chance points, second chance points. Just a little bit killer stuff here or there. You defend well for a couple possessions, and then you give up an offensive like tip-in to Trayvon Spillers. So, it's Q1 loss. Not necessarily, or was at the time, not necessarily a terrible game. That's one you would have liked to have. I think it's so frustrating because Tech was in the game.
Yeah, you got so close, yeah.
I mean, you played so badly at the beginning of the game. You fight all the way back. You're undermanned. You're undersized in a lot of aspects. Sincere Jones played the 5 for the Hokies in like the final 6 minutes of the first half, and you're down 4. You played so well, overcame so much. Jalen Bedford had a great game, and at the end of the day, Wake Forest kind of just makes one more play, and there were some 50-50 calls that probably went Wake Forest's way down the stretch. At the end of the day, it's a 50-50 game in the ACC, and you're going to win some of those. You're probably going to lose some of those. That's one you would have liked to have, not necessarily a bad result. The biggest thing is, Tech's got some opportunities this week to kind of right the ship at home.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been watching ACC basketball or Virginia Tech basketball in the ACC for over 20 years, and there are a million one-possession losses in there. I hardly remember any of them. They're so common.
Yeah.
Right? There's a bunch of one-possession losses and a bunch of one-possession wins, too. This is just common stuff in basketball. Tech could have easily won that game. They could have easily lost the UVA game. That's just the way it goes sometimes. It didn't necessarily like how they lost it. I think Hansberry lost his composure. Like 2 of his fouls that got him in foul trouble. One of them was 80 feet from the basket, and the other was a technical foul.
Yes, his first 2 fouls were both on the offensive end, I think.
Right.
And then the technical.
Yeah,
Mike Young was not happy with that because it was in the first half with 7 or 8 minutes to go.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden you're playing Hansberry with 2 fouls already, and it's just simple jawing after the play. And Hansberry's a smart player, but I think there are a couple times here or there where he just loses his composure.
He's just a highly competitive.
Correct.
You can tell by how hard he plays. But, it's just one of those games. You go on the road and you're down 2 starters and you'd lose by 3. That's a fairly normal result. The funny thing is, with the way basketball works, because, you play over 30 games and there are metrics involved, Virginia Tech is in better shape to make the NCAA tournament after losing that game than they were the day before the game, because UVA won at NC State on Saturday. So they're back up into the top 30, which is a quad 1 win. So now Virginia Tech did not have a quad 1 win on Saturday morning, but on Saturday afternoon they had a quad 1 win. So even though they lost that basketball game, their chances of making the NCAA tournament increased.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Tech gets Wake Forest again in Castle Coliseum at the end of the season, and you've got Toby LaWile, Tyler Johnson. I thought you saw Wake Forest at its best in a lot of aspects. Not necessarily the best shot making from the Demon Deacons, but I thought you saw the stinginess defensively. They got under the Hokies' skin. They made Neoclis of Dallas uncomfortable. You haven't seen that many times. But I can assure you that when the Hokies and Demon Deacons meet again in February, that you'll probably see a much, much better Virginia Tech performance, especially at home. And that's one where you split the season series, the home team wins both, and it's like, all right, that's fair. I mean, you would have liked to win the game on the road because it's Q1, but at the end of the day, it's kind of it's a result that didn't surprise me necessarily.
Well, and I think it is go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
You can't overanalyze one basketball game. That's always a terrible idea. But I will say that I was happy to see Jalen Bedford have a big game because he had been struggling so bad with his shot. He was shooting like 20%. Like first 5-6 games at Tech were great. Shot over 50% from the field. Then his next 6 or 7 games, he shot like 20% from the field. He had a great shooting game the other day from the outside. And what, he scored 25?
25, one shy of his career high.
Exactly.
And it's funny, Steve Forbes after the game, he's like, dang, Bedford lit us up. Mm-hmm. Has he scored like this all season? And somebody was like, that's his season high. And he's like, Gee, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Their point guard had a season high.
Correct.
The game after he scored 0 points.
Yeah, it's
right?
it's a give and a take, right? And
right.
this is why basketball is so interesting. And when you get good coaches, it's such a chess match, because Virginia Tech goes into that game going, well, we got to take away Juke Harris. He's their best player, and as a result, not that you don't defend Cal Meese, but when you take some things away, it opens up other things.
Well,
and it's the same thing from Virginia Tech. Wake Forest keys in on Abdallas and Hansberry so much, and Hansberry gets in foul trouble and is off the floor. Somebody has to step up, and it's Jalen Bedford, and it's the guy who had been not good for the majority of December. He comes back and has a terrific day.
He was the reason they were in the game. I
Correct.
mean, you're down.
And Wake Forest is sitting there scratching its head going, how in the world did we let this happen? And Virginia Tech's going, how in the world did we let this happen? And that's the beauty of basketball.
I mean, when you think about it, to your point, Chris, you're down 2 starters and a third depth piece. Neo Abdallas does not score in the first half. They turned the ball over 14 times, and Virginia Tech was in the game on the road. Like, I took Saturday as a positive to me. Like, Virginia Tech, I still think is in a really, really, really good spot. You got Stanford and Cal coming up this week. With that being said, we mentioned Toby's still out, Tyler Johnson's still out, but I do think there's some positive news on Toby Lowell. Do you expect him back very soon, David?
We'll see. I think he's almost back.
Somebody told Jeff Goodman he's back. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we'll find out more tonight at 8:00ish when the availability report drops. My guess is he's questionable. That he's a game time decision. If you get him back, he's not going to be 100%, certainly. But I do think if the Hokies can kind of ease him back into things and let him kind of get back up to speed, it'd be huge. And I think I asked Mike Young yesterday on the ACC teleconference just about keeping Toby mentally there, because injuries are so taxing on that part of it. Yes, you want to get back and play, but I think mentally for a lot of these guys, it's like they don't know anything else but playing basketball. And so how do you, and Mike Young's like, we just handled it as we've always had. And Toby's in good spirits and whatnot. And I think the biggest thing is, as a team, we have evolved a little bit. I think of it as the Hokies have found different pieces to step up in, like Christian Gerdak. Christian Gerdak has kind of come alive because he's been forced into action earlier than expected. And now you know more of what you have in him, and you might be better down the line for it when Toby Lowell comes back.
Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Does he play on Wednesday? I am honestly not sure.
Okay.
Because last we saw him, he's been in a boot. He'll probably still be in a boot even when he's not playing, just out of precaution. But if they can get him back, and even if he can play 5-10 minutes, I think that's a positive, as long as he's not limited to the point where you're hurting your team having him on the court. And I don't think Mike Young would make that mistake.
Chris, is this one of those weeks where Virginia Tech has a go-to now? From an NCAA tournament standpoint, you get Stanford, who just beat Louisville out on the West Coast, and then Cal that beat Notre Dame on a very, very, very controversial ending. But it's a good basketball team. Day-Day Ames, former Virginia Cavalier. John Camden, former Virginia Tech Hokie. Though they are 2 decent basketball teams, from an NCAA tournament standpoint, with them both coming to Castle Coliseum, do you need to go 2-0 to maybe get to the NCAA tournament, do you think, without making it up down the line?
Well, I mean, I guess you'd need to make it up. But it's too early to say you have to win this game or you have to not lose this game to make the NCAA tournament. Because Virginia right now is quad 1. Well, there's going to be some point this year where they're not quad 1, and then they're going to be quad 1 again, right? So what you need to do to make the NCAA tournament is going to vary from week to week, depending on what other teams do. But I will say this, I think Tech is better than Stanford.
I think Tech's better than both.
The metrics indicate that they are. If they could get Toby Lowell back even for just one of the games, I think it would be big. But playing at home, I think you've got a chance to win both these games. And if you can start out 3-1 in the ACC, that would put you at 14-3. You're in a great position.
Yeah, I mean, think about last season when just when the Hokies went to California. If you remember, they were up big against Stanford. And blew that. They were up big against Cal and almost blew that. They had to scrape by. It'll be interesting to see what these California teams who did not fare well last season coming across the country. I mean, I know they picked off some here and there. Stanford beat Cal on the road, but took some heroic efforts, right? You're playing this one at home, and it's a bummer that the students, of course, aren't going to be here. But I think these two games, if Virginia Tech probably should win both of these games, and it would help itself a lot by going 2-0. Because if you go 2-0, what's your ACC record, Carter?
3-1.
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
And that puts you in really good position going forward. I think you would help yourself out a lot. And winning on the road is hard in the ACC. Like, in a lot of cases, we saw this against Wake Forest. You go on the road, and it's a 50-50 game. Anything can kind of go awry at any point in time, right? You're not guaranteed anything when you go on the road. Playing at home, I mean, Louisville just went on the road to Stanford and lost after Stanford only scored 40 points against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, crazy stuff happens when you go on the road. When you're at home in your own environment, win those games. And if you win these two at home, you're sitting pretty. Like, you're at a little bit of an advantage compared to some teams who have to go on the road this year to California, where you get these two teams at home, you don't have to do that cross-country travel. You did that last year. And honestly, you probably should have gone 2-0 last year, but the team was not very good and played how it expected, sure. Right? Like Chris said, it's too early to tell. But Virginia Tech, I mean, I sent you and Nick, I think it was Fox, the bracketology projections earlier. Some people have Tech in. Lenardi has Tech as one of like the first 4 teams out of the tournament, I think. It's like you help yourself a lot by winning these games because you don't know what's going to come down the pike. Like, you don't know who you're going to lose to injury potentially or who other teams might lose, right? You got to take advantage of the opportunities when they're in front of you. And in my opinion, Stanford is talented, has 2 really, really, really good players. Not as good players as Maxime Reynaud and Jalen Blakes, but they got a really, really good point guard and a really good 6'8" forward. Point guard went off for 28 against Louisville.
Yes.
He's good. If you can kind of key in on those 2 players, I think you can win this game. Cal, I think John Camden's probably going to come in with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, given that he used to play at Virginia Tech. And Day Ames is talented. But this is a team that, held the Stanford team to 40 points. Sorry, that's Notre Dame. This is a team that should have lost to Notre Dame.
They held Notre Dame to 47.
Yeah, it was 47-40. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is a team that in Cal that should have lost to Notre Dame at home, if not for a crazy foul up 3 scenario that was a terrible call.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech is better than both of these teams. You got to take advantage of the opportunities when they come, because if you slip up, then you spend part of your season going, where can we make up the difference here and there, right? I view it honestly in very similar light to the women playing Miami. Miami was a little bit better in terms of the metrics than the Hokies. That's a game that on paper, man, Virginia Tech, if you win this game, you're in good shape. When you're up 18, if you lose it, like that stings more so because you were in such good position, right? Yeah. You do yourself a favor by winning this type of kind of a 50-50 game. And I expect that Mike Young and his staff will have a good game plan going into this one. And if you can get Toby Lawal back at home, ease him into the environment at home, I think it'll only help you.
Speaking of the women real fast before we go, 1-3 in ACC play. You fought to Louisville 85-60 over the weekend. You got any overall thoughts on Virginia Tech women's basketball, where they're at in the season at this point?
I mean, they've got a chance to get back to 500 this week against Syracuse and Boston College. Syracuse is on the road. Boston College is at home.
Well, it was going to be, you're playing in a bad place either way. You're either going to the Carrier Dome or the Connie Forum, right? They both equally suck.
So. Yeah.
And it's cold.
The Miami result, I think, was disappointing simply because anytime you blow an 18-point lead, it's terrible. In my opinion, they looked like an NCAA tournament team for 3 quarters. And then for the final 15 minutes of that game, end of regulation and overtime, they did not look good. against Louisville, personally think Louisville is the best team in the ACC. It reminds me a little bit, with the exception of the Cardinals don't necessarily have any stars. They've got like 8 or 9 really good players. They've got a lot of depth. Reminds me a little bit of Virginia Tech the final 2 years under Kenny Brooks. They're that talented. They don't necessarily maybe have as good of a ceiling given the star power. They don't have a Georgia Amore or Elizabeth Kitley, but they have depth. They have talent. I think that is the runaway favorite in the ACC. And I thought what you saw was Virginia Tech is not top of the league anymore. I think it's obvious. But I didn't think Virginia Tech gave up and quit. Now, some people might look at it and go, well, the game was over at the beginning of the third quarter. It's like, well, yeah, the game's going to be over again for Louisville against a lot of teams this year because that's how good it is. I thought you saw down the stretch Tech play the Cardinals tough, continue to play. I think you saw Samaya Suffren play her best game in a very long time. The toughest part with the women is you got to have somebody step up outside of Karis Baker and Carly Wenzel. And it's kind of you're unsure about who that's going to be on a game-by-game basis. I thought Carly Wenzel was terrific against Miami. She kind of snaps out of her slump, was bad all December, very similar to Jalen Bedford, bounces back and has a really, really good game against Miami because the Canes were keying in on Karis Baker. Well, Louisville keys in on Carly Wenzel, and Karis Baker has a good game, but Wenzel struggles a little bit. You haven't really seen them be on at the same time this year, and you don't really have that consistent third score, and I think that hurts them a little bit. The season's not over. Obviously, they got a lot of basketball to play. Yeah. I think, as Chris said earlier, you can't take too much from one game. I would not look at that Louisville game and go, wow, their season's over. They've got a long ways to go. They're 2 games below 500, but they could very easily go to Syracuse and win this week, go to host Boston College on Sunday and win, and then they got to go to a really bad SMU team next week. These are 3 winnable games in front of them. I think this stretch of play will tell you a lot about where this team is mentally going forward.
I think you can't look at any individual game. Their biggest sin so far is losing to Miami. They shouldn't have lost that game leading by that many points. But the biggest issue for this team is when you don't have a big team, you need to be like a bunch of junkyard dogs out there, which they're not really. They've got maybe a few who fit that description, but you better be able to shoot too. They can't shoot. So if you look at the last 6 or 7 or 8 years of Virginia Tech women's basketball, they're always a 34 to 38% three-point shooting team. They're shooting 27% this year.
Yeah.
They're losing anywhere from 6 to 9 points per game off their three-point shooting this year, and that would have been enough to beat Miami. If they continue to shoot 27%, then it's going to be a disappointing season. They have to get back on track from as far as that standpoint goes.
Yeah, and I think you saw last year, Virginia Tech won, or maybe overachieved in some aspects against Georgia Tech, against Miami on the road last year because it outshot teams. You had a really good three-point shooting team last year, one of the best in the ACC. And I don't know, I think it's part makeup and also part just the other day against Louisville, Hokies were 0 of 16 from 3. Yes. It's the first time since 2015 Virginia Tech did not make a three-pointer in a game. Part of that was Louisville's defense. Part of it's just Tech didn't shoot the ball well. And that's not going to happen every game, obviously. But this team has to find different ways to score. And the other thing is, you've got to keep the foot on the gas for 40 minutes. You keep the foot on the gas for 40 minutes against Miami, close that game out, you feel a little bit different because you're sitting at 2-2 instead of 1-3. It's gonna be tough for them these next couple games because, like we talked about with the men, you go on the road to Syracuse. That's a game you could win, but Syracuse is also very stingy, has a pretty good post player. I think the Hokies, it's not like danger zone yet, but you got to get back on track. And this, I think, will test their mental a lot, especially because you can't let the Miami loss, the way that ended, beat you multiple times.
Yeah. What's coming up on TechSideline.com? Very busy week with the portal, obviously, but what's coming up on TSL,
I'm scrolling through
Chris?
Twitter to make sure there's no updates.
Nothing before we go.
But, I think, yesterday I did an article on offensive transfer portal. Tomorrow I'll write something up on the defensive side of the ball. I've already started on it. I don't want to do like an article one day and then the very next day do an article. Like, and you don't want to do them too often because things happen so fast that what you just wrote an hour ago becomes completely invalidated sometimes. But yeah, you know, we've seen the Hokies obviously do some work on both sides of the ball. But you know, there's some other positions they need to fill. They've brought in a lot of young guys with, you know, 4 years of experience left. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of their 5 transfers so far have 4 years of experience, 4 years of eligibility left. They also need to bring in a few experienced guys too to bridge that gap. You don't want to throw a bunch of young guys on the field more than you have to, because like I said earlier, with the chances of winning the ACC probably aren't great this year with that road schedule, but you still got a chance to win plenty of games. I mean, it's not like you're playing the SEC West here or anything like that, right? I think you still got a reasonable chance to go 8-4 next season, which would be a huge step in the right direction. So I think Tech has done a good job getting some guys with good long-term futures, but you also need to supplement them with some experience as well. So I think hopefully we see some of that between now and into portal season.
We got basketball, a lot of it. It continues. Men Stanford, women at Syracuse, men Cal, women BC. So 3 home games in the next couple of days. A lot of basketball stuff. And I think this is a big week for both teams. Like, these are a lot of 50-50 games. These are a lot of games that you could win. You got to take advantage of them if you want to be a postseason team. Like, these are the games that the occasional slip up hurts you down the road. And I think I wrote it after the women's game against Miami. I think that one stings simply from the perspective of, you look back at last year's Stanford game, very similar. Hokies were up like 12, lost that game in overtime. You know, but Stanford, Miami, similar this year, that's a bubble team, right? Boston College on Sunday is not a bubble team. Boston College is at the bowels of the ACC, really, really bad.
As they are in most sports, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys saw this. I think it was Field of 68 put out a list of, they anonymously pulled every ACC men's basketball coach on what are the best jobs in the league. And Virginia Tech was
13th.
Tied for 13th with Pitt. Yeah.
That's probably right. You see where Boston College was?
18th, and it was unanimous.
Unanimously the worst job in the league. Now, we're talking about the women a little bit too, but I mean, kind of the same feeling, right? And I think on the men's side, you got Cal and Stanford. You've got opportunities here at home. Like, Tech has been really good at home this year. And you saw, like, I hope the crowds are good this week, because you've seen what a good crowd against Virginia can do. I know that was New Year's Eve, but like, you can play really, really well at home, get some momentum back. I mean, Carter, we're talking about a team that is 3-1 going into next week. Good test against SMU on the road. Like, any opportunities you can get to get a little bit ahead, that will help you down the road. So a lot of basketball stuff coming up. We'll continue to update you with the portal. We've pre-written a bunch of stuff because the transfer portal continues to spin. Fingers crossed for no more commitments after midnight. I would like to be able to not have to like get out of bed after I'm already.
I would recommend you just
sleep.
stay in bed the next time, because nobody's reading it at 12:30.
But people are waking up to read it.
David Grimes.
It's one less thing to do. One less. I mean, the first commitment, was it Henderson or was it Jennings? One of them is like
Jennings.
Happened in the middle of Jeff Wall's press conference at Louisville. I'm sitting there like, oh, commitment.
David had already pre-written those articles, but he was out doing basketball stuff, so I was publishing them and sharing them and everything like that. So, and then I've pre-written 1 or 2, and then he's pre-written some more. And then sometimes you just get you'll at some point we'll get surprised out of nowhere. And,
like last night, I didn't.
That's right. We didn't
have that one written, but what's helped is some of these guys. I mean, they redshirted, so they've never really played, so it's simple to write about it. It's a lot of just their backstory and recruiting, but I enjoyed my trip to Louisville, by the way.
Yeah, the youngster's great.
Oh my gosh,
It's
the
so
best
awesome.
arena in the league, man, and it's not even close.
Yeah, yeah.
And the people there are so nice, so hospitable. Like, they put me courtside, got to sit on the baseline, and it's like, man, more teams need to have media seating right off the court.
Where did Louisville rank in the best jobs?
3.
Third.
Yeah.
So it was Duke, UNC.
Mhm.
Yeah, and honestly,
and I think it was like one vote separated them.
Yeah.
So, and then Louisville. That's probably fair.
60 seconds.
I don't know about UNC these days.
Okay.
I think there's something about them where they just insist they have to have a Carolina guy as their head coach,
and it's
right?
not the right move.
And it's absolutely not the right move. Like when you have to hire an alum to coach your team every time, you're closing yourself off to some really good coaching possibilities. And for every Roy Williams, there's what was his name, Matt Doherty.
Yeah, Matt Doherty.
Yeah. So
it was, I guess, in terms of votes, Duke 191 got 8 first place votes. Carolina 190, 3. So I guess that was like the tiebreaker. Louisville was at 177. Then it was Virginia 4th, which I think is fair. I mean, the way that Cavaliers support the program is fair. But then, it was NC State, Syracuse, Miami, SMU, Clemson. Below 100, Notre Dame at 10, Wake, Florida State, Pitt, Virginia Tech. So, and I think that's why, like, a lot of people talk about Mike Young. You can overachieve a lot with a really good coach, and you put the resources in. And I think this could be a very special year, and that's why, like, it's tough. Like, you look at some of the bracketology, and it's like, man, like Virginia Tech is. Some people have Virginia Tech in the tournament field, and if you slip up at home against Stanford and Cal, it hurts you a little bit because you got to take advantage of every opportunity, because when it comes Selection Sunday and you're competing against other bubble teams, like the fewer blemishes on your resume that you have, you'll be safer in the field. So I think this could be a very special year. I like the way they're playing, even with the Wake Forest loss. I thought the resilience they showed down the stretch was big. Wake made one more play.
Honest question, though. Do you actually think Mike Young took the time to fill out that poll? This time of year, with how busy he is, he took the time to fill out that poll?
Some of those things is sometimes, what do you think, grad assistant?
Yes.
Fill it out for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
maybe.
what a lot of football coaches do for their all-conference ballots. They just hand it to somebody on their staff and say, fill this out.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's the sports information directors that fill it out.
Right.
I don't know.
I would put money on no. I don't think Mike Young would have filled that out.
You can do that in the summer when you don't have anything to do, but yeah. I mean, because you sit there like you beat UVA in overtime on New Year's Eve, and then you've got another game on Saturday. Oh, well, let me take 30 minutes out of my day prepared for Wake Forest after that overtime game to really give a deep dive into ranking the ACC programs 1 through 18. Let me dedicate a lot of my time to that. So probably.
Food for thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I find it interesting because I think I think it's accurate. I mean, I think but that's why, like, you got to take advantage of unique years like this where you have a kind of a generational talent in Neoclis of Dallas. And I know he hasn't necessarily played like it because teams are going to key in on him and do different things. Makes it very difficult, but you got the pieces around him. Amani Hansberry, he's been terrific, even when he's picking up a couple of different fouls. Like, I think you get Toby LaWild back, and I think this could be a well-oiled machine going forward. It might be a bummer that Tyler Johnson might be out for a while, but I like where they're at, and I thought watching them play, the way they responded to that, same thing with the women against Louisville, like, you just got to fight, man. You got to show grit, and you got to play the next game, and it'll be very interesting. Like, again, this will be a huge week because the women could be sitting here 3-3 heading next Monday. They could be 3-3 heading into the SMU game. The men could be sitting here at 3-1. If so, that's big. If you're the other way, if the men, are like 2-2, you're feeling not as confident. But it also depends on how the games go.
Well, for Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from episode 463 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you very soon after the Hokies square off with Stanford and Cal.